Hey guys, Alex Newman here with the New American, and we have a very special guest, Michael Voris. I'm sure you've seen him. He's the founder and the leader of Church Militant. You can find him at churchmilitant.com. They do incredible work. Michael, I've been so fascinated by your work, and all my family sends me your stuff. There seems to be kind of a crisis right now in the Catholic Church.
Absolutely.
What do you think is going on? And one of the most interesting things that I saw that you did was you had all these priests who were being persecuted by their own bishops for holding mass, for not going along with the COVID stuff. What's going on with the church in America?
I mean, many of those sorts of things, the failure on the part of bishops to, get serious behind the pro-life movement, that's been a problem for really since Roe v. Wade. This sort of thing that you're just mentioning, the shutting down of the churches during COVID, the denial of the sacraments, all of these things, the immigration, their support behind illegal immigration, all of it. These are all symptoms of a root problem within the church, and that is that the hierarchy, bishops, senior clergy, have been infested with, in theological terms, we call it modernism. In political terms, we call it Marxism. And they're just opposite sides of the same coin. And it eventually boils down to wanting to create a kingdom here on earth, ignoring the kingdom of heaven and all of the work you have to do in the spiritual world. And that's why you now see bishops, involved in political, downright straight up political issues that have nothing to do with sin per se, but are political. And they're policy things like climate change, which is garbage, man-made climate change, illegal immigration. How are we going to talk about COVID? All those are earthly concerns. They obviously have a moral dimension to them. But to try to baptize these things, which they do, and try to make them something larger than what they are vis-a-vis salvation, that's what's wrong. Many of the Catholic bishops do not believe the Catholic faith. And when you come to that reality, you're like, a light goes on. Everything makes sense.
How did that happen? I mean, and we see this like with the LGBT infiltration. It seems to be becoming more and more embedded within elements, at least, of the church. How is this happening? Are Catholics letting their guard down? What's going on?
Well, I think at this point, Catholics don't even know there's a guard to have up. But the major reason here that you would say this is when communism became some dominant force beginning in the 1920s, and the U.S. Communist Party was, it certainly wasn't off the radar in the early 1920s. Stalin and communists understood that, like Antonio Gramsci with the founder of the Italian Communist Party, that their number one enemy was the Catholic Church. But they invaded everything. They infiltrated everything there is: government, institutions, education, courts, law, and the church. And particularly American seminaries. They infested seminaries in Poland and all over Europe in the early 20th century. But they also hit America. And what happened is, they planted these horrible seeds, and then little by little, they've all come to fruition, and now you see it. I mean, communism rejects God, and that's why you have so many people now, clerics, bishops, who reject God. They're not going to come out and say I'm an atheist. They'd get run out of town. But they don't need to. And I think here's a really important point. They don't want to destroy the church like communists don't want to destroy America. They want to destroy Americanism, and the bishops want to destroy the faith. They don't want to destroy the church. The church is a great big institution they get to use. Trillions of dollars worth of assets all over the world. Probably the most advanced diplomatic corps on earth. Major influence, huge holdings. Why would you want to wipe that out? You want to take it and corrupt it to your own use, and that's what's going on. All of the question of homosexuality within the clergy that we've seen, a little bit of that is the sexual abuse issue of minors, but that's just a tip of the iceberg that became public because it's criminal. The rest of the stuff that's just immoral, bishops having sex with each other, promoting homosexuality in the seminaries, all of this sort of thing, that's kind of underneath the radar of most people. But there's moral corruption with these men. They're thieves, they're liars, they're cheats, most of them are gay, most of them are active. And you look at something like that, you're like, well, no wonder the church is just sliding into hell right now. And faithful Catholics in the political realm and the religious realm have got to get informed and get involved and fight to get it back.
So that leads me into the question of Pope Francis, Bergoglio,
Yep.
and one of the things that one of our Catholic editors at the New American, William Jasper, reported was that there seemed to be some subterfuge involving the Obama administration and the Clintons in the ousting of, I guess, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI and the installing of Bergoglio. What are your thoughts on? I mean, I know you have a megaphone when it comes to Catholic circles in America. What are you telling people about what's going on with the current pope and the things he's promoting, and also this very unusual transfer of power from Benedict to Francis?
Yeah, on that score, first of all, he resigns kind of out of the blue. I was in the Philippines giving a talk, and my phone went off, and I saw that in early February 2013. I was like, "What?" And right in the middle of the talk, it went, "Hold on a second." I was like, "Oh, this I have to stop the talk for." But it's really hard to say in detail what actually happened there. Of course, so he resigns. They have the conclave. Jorge Bergoglio gets elected. He's Francis. Was that the design, or is that just what happened because he resigned? It's really hard to say. There's all kinds of right now conspiracy theories. Although conspiracy theories, most part have seemed to come true in the last couple of years. It's really hard to sort of pinpoint that. I guess one of my concerns on that is none of the cardinals who were in that conclave, Cardinal Mueller, Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Sarah, none of them have come out and said that. None of them have said publicly, and to my knowledge, privately, and I've spoken with some of them, have ever said that was a rigged election. He's not really the Pope. None of them have said that. And if they're not going to say it, and they would be the eyewitnesses to it, but I don't think anybody else should do it. That doesn't mean, however, lay that aside. That doesn't mean he therefore can't be a bad pope if he wasn't crookedly elected. The church has had many bad popes. They each have their own sort of flavor of bad. But if you say, okay, let's go back and look at his history. He's in Argentina. He's a Peronist. All of that stuff. Does he have? He certainly doesn't seem to be any fan of capitalism. He's got some sort of corrupted idea of social justice, which is just a byproduct of everything going on in the church for the past number of decades. So he's inherited that. And finally, all of the gunk and filth and everything of the poor theology and the rotten cultural understanding and all of that has just, the waters have risen high, and they finally have now touched the throne of St. Peter. I don't think anybody should be surprised at that. He was a priest and a bishop, and he grew up in this whole realm of modernism, Marxism, and the idea of in South America, there's this big notion of liberation theology, where the church is sort of the role of the church is to be put into the service of the poor, to overthrow dictatorships, and that's not the role of the church. The role of the church is not to be put in the service of the poor, the temporally poor. It's to be put in the service of the spiritually poor. Now, some of those people will be materially poor, others will be wealthy, but it's to awaken within everybody their desire to seek salvation. I don't even think those kinds of conversations happen in the Vatican anymore. It's all about how do we get everybody to take the vax, and we have to plant some trees and save the earth and save the whales, and it's like, what are you guys talking about? Let governments do that. I understand you've got to provide moral guidance, sure, and leadership and example, but in the service of people not going to hell, not so you can advance some political agenda for its own sake.
Fascinating. And where do you think the church goes from here? I mean, I know a lot of American Catholics are very concerned. You're coming from a Catholic family, people who are very devout, are very alarmed by what's happening. Where do you see everything moving from here?
Well, I think a lot of this will depend on who steps out on that loggia next. I think there has been so much controversy and so much bother that even allies of Francis that he has put into the College of Cardinals may have the sense that we want to take our foot off the gas here for a little bit. This isn't really sort of our, where they go from there. I don't know, but the first thing it has to do is you have to retreat from what's being called Bergoglianism in the church. There has to be okay, we may not come out and condemn it in the next pontificate, but we certainly need to take our foot off the gas of it in the next pontificate. I think the idea of going after anything in the church any people in the church. That for example, Catholics who go to the Latin Mass, smaller number but growing rapidly, especially among the young. The complete shrinking and shriveling up and going away of sort of the 1960s, 1970s idea of liturgy in the church. I think you see a parallel in the political world with what's going on in the church. You see, most young people don't care about politics unless it's bad caring.
Yeah.
Most young people in the church don't care about the church, but the ones who are there are intent on restoration, clarity, fighting for the truth, and you see that in the political and church realm, and or better yet, the cultural and the church realm. And the word culture comes from cult, which means religion. So it's always about religion and spirituality. It just expresses itself in different arenas: politics, culture, policy, whatever. But it's all driven by: do you believe in God, or do you not? So who's your God? God or man? That's going to launch you off onto two very divergent paths. One ends in hell, the other ends in heaven.
Well, before we let you go, I got to ask, what do you recommend to Catholics out there who are concerned about what's happening? How should they get involved? Obviously, they should go to your website, Church Militant.
Sure, we love that.
Yeah, but how do people get involved? I mean, should they be trying to make change? Should they be educating their fellow parishioners? What would you say they should be doing?
I think the first thing they have to do is they have to understand the desperate times we're in right now, just as a race, not just, isolated like I'm Catholic or I'm Baptist or I'm Republican or, I'm Ugandan or whatever. As a race, the entire human family is being attacked viciously by the demonic. Demons, the devil, Satan, hell, hates humanity. And you have to recognize that sort of grounding principle. And from that, now you look for examples of it. And then each person has different, gifts and qualities and, personality traits and whatever. And there are a million different ways to get involved. So you have to get informed. You have to understand that the battle is a religious battle. That's what it is. This is a crusade, whether it's trying to capture America back in through the realm of politics, like these kinds of events, or whatever it is. It's a crusade. It's a holy work because you're trying to ultimately defend the dignity of every man, woman, and child made in the image and likeness of God, realizing that that individual has an eternal destiny. And the playing out of that has to happen in this life. So understand that, and then see what you want to get involved in. Do you want to join your parish council and insist on reverent liturgy and stop receiving Holy Communion in the hand and walking out the door? Are you interested in politics? Do you want to run for office? Do you want to round up a bunch of people to be poll watchers? Do you want to go keep an eye on the school board so they're not perverting your children in education class? There's 1,000 million problems. Somewhere inside of you, God created you for this time and this place to fight. Find your battle and go fight it. And don't be sitting around, I don't know what to do and I don't really speak well. That's ridiculous.
Moses didn't speak well.
Yeah, Moses didn't speak well. He got Aaron, or God gave him Aaron. I think it's really important for people to understand, your eternal salvation. What's the second greatest command? Love your neighbor as yourself. If you aren't trying to save the culture, you don't give a damn about your neighbor. And don't pretend you do, because you don't. If you're not sacrificing, that's what love is. That's the divine command, is to love your neighbor. Well, how do you love your neighbor? Love is only expressed in sacrifice. And if you're not losing sleep, if you're not contributing money, if you're not contributing time, if you're not, if it doesn't become your core to say, I need to step up what I can do right now to save the world, then you shrank in the face of battle. And you know what? You're going to have to pay for it in the next life.
Well, Michael, we really appreciate your insight. Before you go, please tell the folks your website again. You've got 4 books. Yep. Tell people how they can follow you, follow the great work that you guys are doing at Church Militant.
Thank you. This easiest question on earth. Love it. It's churchmilitant.com, churchmilitant.com. The militant doesn't mean blowing things up. Well, it does sort of mean blowing things up, but not in the real sense.
Strongholds.
Strong words. The church is seen as 3 different, occupying time and space in 3 different entities. Souls are in heaven are the church triumphant. Souls in purgatory, who have died but not ready for heaven. That's the church suffering. And the church here on earth is militant because we're still fighting the evil. And those three are the communion of saints. We're kind of talking about the one here because that's the dimension of time and space we're in right now. And, come to the site. We talk about all of the things going on in the world through a Catholic lens. We've built Western civilization as a church. We've been around for 2,000 years. This is a church that Christ founded. And as St. Francis de Sales said, the only way to get to heaven is to die fighting.
Amen. Well, thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, we'll be back with more. I'm Alex Newman. This is The New American. Michael Voris, Church Militant. Check it out, and we'll see you soon.